Greetings, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. Tonight, we'll be reading Brainwashed by Tom Burrell. We're going into studs and sluts. I want to apologize to you for not having been here this past week. I know that I normally broadcast 2 times per week and I've missed 4 different appointments with you. Please forgive me. This was the celebration season for my niece who was promoted from 8th to ninth grade. And she had a near death experience during the same time on a zip line where her neck got caught in the harness. So this past 2 weeks has been very eventful, and I apologize for not being here. But I'm back and we will continue on. Again, we're on page 41 of Brainwashed, reading studs and sluts.
Greetings. My name is the Revolutionary Matron, and my show is called The Learning Curve. I broadcast on a network called KWAZ Radio. There are other hosts on the network I'd like you to meet.
Greetings, everyone. This is Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast, inviting you to tune in to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the pro-black perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
This is D Webb with the Harsh Reality Podcast, asking you to tune in where we tackle the news of the day that affects our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed here belong solely to the respondent, and they do not necessarily reflect any broadcast networks, affiliates, nor sponsors. The Learning Curve is a broadcast created for the benefit of my global community. Black is a consciousness. Content is being used for our commentary, research, criticism, education, scholarship, teaching, preaching, and news reporting. No copyright infringement is intended. I will make enunciation mistakes. I will give you my opinion about the information. And if you ever ask, I will send you my source.
We're on chapter 3 of Brainwashed. The title of this segment is Studs and Sluts, and it asks the question, why do we conform to Black sexual stereotypes? It also starts with a quote by Thomas Jefferson. We all know his history, who said, "Love seems with them to be more an eager desire than a tender, delicate mixture of sentiment and sensation." So he was watching his African enslaved people and their intimate relationships, and he was making guesses about how they related to one another. By plan or circumstance, the April 2008 edition of Vogue magazine garnered worldwide attention. It wasn't because it featured the first Black man ever on its cover. No, the controversy was linked to Vogue's decision to personify a classic American stereotype. With his towering 6'8" frame anchored in size 16 shoes, NBA star LeBron James, who is nicknamed King James, struck a familiar pose on the magazine's cover, gorilla like, baring his teeth, flexing his muscles, with one hand dribbling a ball, the other clutching the tiny, slinky waist of the white, blonde supermodel Giselle Bundchen. Kong on the court. The criticism was swift and furious. Sports columnists and cultural commentators accuse the editors of the influential fashion magazine of monkeying around with James's image, evoking the centuries old stereotype of the black savage in search of the prized white woman, to give their annual issue devoted to size and shape a little extra thrill. Others noted that the image was framed by photographer Annie Lebowitz, was eerily similar to the 1933 King Kong movie poster in which the giant raging dark ape carries off a fair-skinned damsel in distress. I was just having fun with it, LeBron James told reporters, dismissing the controversy. We had a few looks, and that was the best one we had. Everything my name is on is going to be criticized in a one way or another, good or bad. Who cares? Honestly, at the end of the day, who cares? Who cares? We all should. Here's why. In framing King James as King Kong, Vogue, which reaches 1.2 million readers a month, perpetuated one of the most enduring stereotypes of Black sexuality, the brute. He is oversexed, menacing Black man, inherently violent, destructive, and shady. He appears on MTV as the gun wielding, muscle bound rapper 50 Cent, in the film New Jack City as the vicious crime lord played by Wesley Snipes, and throughout pornography as the well endowed Mandingo stud ravaging the purity of white women. LeBron James may have just been having fun, but little did he know that he was playing an ugly, debilitating stereotype that dates back several centuries. Supersexed. Two powerful slave era images are still active, still distorted, still damaging, and, thanks to our Black inferiority complex, still perpetuated by our own people. They are the brute and the Jezebel. The brute, which is a noun, is a non human creature, bestial, animal qualities and desires. As an adjective, it is an animal, not human, not characterized by intelligence or reason, irrational, savage, and cruel. The Jezebel, as a noun, is a woman who is regarded as evil and scheming, a wicked, shameless woman. Surely, we all know someone who fits the mold of the black brute or the gold digging black Jezebel. If not personally, we've seen their amplified personas via televised media and marketing images, pop literature, or on the saucy music videos. As with Black family dysfunction, we are familiar with the contemporary manifestations of studs and sluts phenomenon. Studs and sluts dynamics. Studs on the hunt. Men who define themselves by their sexuality and sexual exploits. They are constantly on the sexual hunt with self worth directed to their conquests, directly tied to their conquests and sexual performance. Sex is a higher priority than job advancement, fatherhood, or real relationships. They will risk all in the pursuit of the quarry. They cannot and will not get too involved with their conquests. They have an internalized brutish nature. I'm doing this to you, not with you, is their mantra. They animalize, dehumanize, and objectify women to reinforce the idea that they are unworthy of emotional commitment and long term involvement. The gold digging slut. Jezebel, like sex objects, believe that to get anywhere in life, they have to be really good at it. Sex is their ticket, their moneymaker. Gold diggers allow themselves to be conquests in return for material gain, things like dinners, jewelry, rent, or a starring role in a video. They are conditioned to devalue sex. I will add here personally that they are conditioned to place a monetary value on sex. Their innate emotions and need for tenderness, compassion, and love are constantly repressed. They believe that they are unworthy of love and respect and avoid disappointment at all costs. Number three, the gotta do what you gotta do, sex as a means of sustenance and immediate gratification, sex without emotion. Defensive self devaluation justifies their sensation driven life. Propaganda validates their actions. Sexual behavior is legitimate and necessary to make it. They disassociate themselves from their bodies and the possibility of a legitimate means to a holistic, authentic love. Yes, we know that sluts and studs exist, but here we attempt to understand why and examine the impact of these stereotypes on a race still in need of therapy. Let's decode the enduring legacy of the brute and the Jezebel. Age by association. We believe that even among people who aren't particularly prejudiced, the association between blacks and apes is still strong, held in place through implicit knowledge, the result of a lifetime of conditioning rooted in historical representations of blacks as less than human. It was a kind of racial programming, a legacy, even something as progressive as Obama's election cannot obliterate. A quote by Philip Atiba Goff and Jennifer Eberhardt, who were social psychologists. The belief that blacks are sexual savages descended from fiction rooted in first impressions of Africans. Englishmen were introduced to the chimpanzee and the black Africans in Western Africa at the same time and place. The startlingly human appearance and movements of the chimpanzee aroused their imagination. So, what he's saying is this is uh, racist scientific socialism. According to A. Elaine Brown Crawford, as early as the mid 1500s, English explorers and traders who traveled to Africa mistook the semi nudity of Africans as lewdness. They also misappropriated the cultural tradition of polygamy as uncontrollable lust. In Europe and European eyes, the welfare, diet, and other aspects of African life they encountered placed Africans among the beasts. Africans, seen as the dark continent, possessed a natural landscape upon which lions, zebras, and other exotic wildlife flourished. Therefore, the people in this strange geography surely merited comparison with the beasts with which they coexisted. The grand poobah of the founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, helped legitimize the belief that blacks are akin to apes in his Notes on the State of Virginia, the most widely read book of the period. Jefferson argued that blacks prefer the superior beauty of whites as uniformly as is the preference of the orangutan for the black woman over those of its own species. So, what he's saying here is that Thomas Jefferson went on to talk about how black people preferred white people as sexual partners, and he was doing that so that he could justify acting out his own lusts on Sally Hemings. Size matters. On the South Side, all white men and white women would come to the clubs to try to get black women and black men. It was a mixer. In those days, the penis thing was so damned powerful that white women were not frightened. They'd come and drive to your neighborhood, coming to look for it. They'd ask you, "Do you have a big one?" Ron, a 74-year-old artist, and I were born around the same era, 73 years after black slaves were emancipated. It was a time when we still navigated the dark eddies of harsh racial undercurrents. Loving interracial relationships were still deadly taboo, especially between black males and white females. White men, however, could use black women for sexual gratification without condemnation. These men inherited a system designed to keep them advantaged and empowered. Those cunning 17th century colonial leaders managed to establish a code of behavior that gave white men the best of both worlds: unfettered access to black women while barricading black men from white women, because white men were seen as the most powerful person in the racial social dynamic, and black men were seen as the least powerful person in the racial social dynamic. The colonial fathers understood that slave owners were first and foremost men. Rape at its core is a power trip, a means to exert control. The institution of slavery provided ample opportunity for white slaveholders to unleash their puritanically repressed sexual urges on female slaves who were powerless to reject their advances. Thomas Jefferson provided a moral escape clause which allowed lascivious, so called Christian slavers to sexually subjugate black women. Jefferson helped extinguish religious guilt by animalizing slaves, defining them as unfeeling, unemotional beasts. And he said, "They are more ardent after their female, but love seems with them to be more of an eager desire than a tender, delicate mixture of sentiment and sensation. Their existence appears to participate more of a sensation than reflection, an animal whose body is at rest and who does not reflect." Again, he had to absolve himself of the guilt of having sex with his wife's half sister and having children by her. The slaveholders' carnal, beastly behavior was also legitimized with propaganda so effective that blacks, both enslaved and free, absorbed its message and through the centuries acted out the propagandized stereotypes. Jefferson's obsession with black sexuality overlapped with white scientists' fixation with African penises, specimens of which were collected and studied. In The N Word, Who Can Say It, Who Shouldn't, and Why, author Jabari Assem quotes British niggerologist Charles White, who in his 1799 anatomy studies gushed that the penis of an African is larger than that of a European and has been shown in every anatomical school in London. Preparations of them are preserved in the most anatomical museums, and I have one in mind, which is what this author was saying. LeBron as the modern day rendition of the brutish ape-like menace preying on a fair-skinned maiden does indeed matter, especially in a society fixated on warped racial images. However, the brute is one of but half of a destructive diabolical duo. His counterpart is the marketing of black inferiority is the Jezebel, skank by any other name. I ain't never had to pay a fare to ride a steamboat neither. I was good looking yellow gal in them days and would ride free wherever I wanted to go. Auntie Charity Anderson, who was a former slave. Singers like Justin Timberlake and Sierra are talented young artists. Like LeBron, the entertainers would probably consider their music video Love, Sex, Magic just a bit of youthful, exotic fun. No big deal, right? Wrong again. In this video, Ciara plays a sexual tease, gyrating, crawling on all fours, pole dancing, rubbing her body against the white singer and licking his face while he sits in a chair in a king like position. In the opening sequence, Timberlake actually pulls a dog chain attached to Sierra's neck. Throughout the video, he repeatedly slaps the seductress's butt, but she works her magic and her sex. Timberlake seems to be the prototypical neo massa. Excuse me. While performing a musical number during the Super Bowl 28's halftime show in 2004, the singer ripped off part of Janet Jackson's wardrobe, exposing her bare breasts to millions around the globe. The controversial stunt was timed to coincide with the last line of Timberlake's song, Rock Your Body. I'm going to have you naked by the end of this song. The 21st century Jezebel is a gold digging, butt jiggling, thong tossing, pole sliding gold digger is nearly as ubiquitous as the UL symbol is on all things electric. She is the lustful black woman with an insatiable sexual appetite who uses her body for money, vengeance, or power. She was Lisa Ray, the college student turned stripper named Diamond in Players Club, the gyrating rear in most all hip hop videos, and the booty call centerfolds tucked within the pages of King and other magazines targeting black readers. Indeed, no music video seems to be complete without a Jezebel. She is the flesh and blood accessory akin to the flashy cars and iced out jewelry worn by the rappers on whom she bumps and grinds. As Deborah Gray White comments in Ain't I a Woman? Female Slaves in the Plantation South, one of the most prevalent images of Black women in antebellum America was of a person governed almost entirely by her libido, a Jezebel character. In every way, Jezebel was the counter image of the mid 19th century ideal of the Victorian lady. She did not lead men and children to God. Piety was foreign to her. She saw no advantage in prudery. Indeed, domesticity paled in importance before matters of the flesh. Perpetuating the whole persona. I know this to be true. If you can do certain sexual things better than another person, you tend to get treated better. You get more out of that person, more of their money, their time, their attention. I learned how through practice and by watching a whole lot of movies. A quote from Layla. The Jezebel stereotype was used to excuse rape and justify the slave owner's carnal desires. Did you hear that? The Jezebel trope was made up so that they could feel better about what they were doing to us. After all, How could it be rape if the victim is property designed for a seedy sexual indulgence? During the first half of the 20th century, the myth manifested itself in the form of everyday objects, from postcards to novelty items. Today, the depiction of Black women as Jezebel like whores continues, thanks in large part to the best selling Black female rappers who probably have no clue that they're playing myth personified roles. That particular idea isn't mine. It was written by author Lori A. Tribbitt Williams in her book, Talking Loud, Saying Nothing: Little Kim and Foxy Brown, Characters of African American Womanhood. Trina, Lil Kim, and Foxy Brown are just a few of the Black female rappers who have risen to the top of the charts by flaunting their sexuality under the guise of women's empowerment. So you hear that? All of this, I can dress how I want, I can do what I want. That is just women's empowerment masquerading around. That's just, excuse me, that's just the Jezebel trope we're parading around as women's empowerment. That's not actual empowerment. Much of their music did nothing more than perpetuate the Jezebel mythology and reinforce the idea that Black women are hypersexual, one dimensional playthings for a whole new generation. The wikimusicguide.com website describes Trina as admirable, defiant notes and tones. She turned tables on the male dominated genre with hit singles No Panties and 69 Ways. Trina showed her real sexy and naughty personality, the website boasts. Allow me to add here that if you are making music called No Panties and 69 Ways, you are not being empowered by that type of music. You're being degraded by that type of music. Allow me to decipher this colorful marketing lingo. Trina is just another rapping version of Jezebel. In any case, and in case there's any doubt, here's a sample from 69 Ways. Open up my legs, put your head in them till I bust like lead from a heater. In a society that already considers Black women as bitches and hoes, such validation should be considered treasonous. Together, the Jezebel and the brute stereotypes reinforce the ageless idea that Blacks are morally loose, culturally retarded, and sexually perverse. This is why we should not only care, but we should care enough to change. The rap on rap. I like being looked at as a sexual object. I had no problem with it. To me, that meant they were looking at me as someone who could satisfy, who could deliver sexually. Sometimes that was all they wanted from me, and I was cool with that. A quote from a man named James who was only 33 years old at the time of its writing. Greetings, Sister Raw, and the elders listening with you. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're at the bottom of page 49. Vogue was turned into a whipping post, and rightly so, for its racially charged imagery, with the prime culprits for perpetuating these hypersexual images are heavily rotated music videos on networks like MTV and BET. The harmless fun crowd will also dismiss any damage caused by images of oversexed Black video vixens by pointing to the sexually explicit acts of white female artists like Britney Spears or Lady Gaga. What they fail to note is that these singers are not linked to a past of sexual servitude. For every Lady Gaga, there are dozens of white female artists like Colby Calliot and Sheryl Crow who add balance. That's what's missing from the acts of black female artists who conform to the sex sales maxim. Also, even if rappers use the cop out, well, whites do it too, there are no corollary hardcore Trina type examples on the right roster. There are mulatto artists on the roster, but not white artists that put out that type of debasing music. Regrettably, it's a genre black female rappers control. More importantly, lewd white images do not add to the mental brainwashing inflicted on young African Americans. Consider the data released on Rap, which was a report issued in April of 2008, the same month as the King Kong Vogue cover. The Parents Television Council, in partnership with Enough is Enough campaign, analyzed a total of 3 weeks of content found on BET's Rap City and 106 in Park and MTV's Sucker Free. When it came to sex, the report released shocking findings, including in 3 weeks, there were 746 sexually explicit scenes or lyrical references to an average of 27 instances per hour. 45% of the adult content in the music videos was of a sexual nature, followed by an explicit language of 29%, violence of 13%, drug use and sales at 9%, and other illegal activity at 3%. Vulgar and slang references to sexual anatomy happened 103 times. Examples include the term gushy, used to refer to a woman's lubricated vagina, in just 1 week during the period of March 22, 2008. What the report didn't quantify was the vast majority of images accompanying the music of young, blinged out brutes and jiggling Jezebels. Among some of the most played videos, for example, was the Trap Stars Clicks Get Big from their debut album Hood Depot, surrounded by midriff bearing seductresses and flesh obsessed rap trio commands. Vibrate your body, make a player want to cut, which is slang for having sex. Get Big, however, pales in comparison to the borderline pornographic music videos, including Pussy Poppin' by Ludacris, Wobble Wobble by the 504 Boys, or the infamous Tip Drill video by Nelly, in which the St. Louis rapper swipes a credit card through the ample cheeks of a bikini clad video vixen named White Chocolate. As for the butt swiping incident, Nelly, like LeBron, sideswiped the seriousness of his actions. In an interview with FHM magazine, the rapper defended his brute like behavior by equating it to a Hollywood Jezebel esque performance, saying, Halle Berry can go on film and get the dog shit freaked out of her, and she wins an Oscar, Nelly said, referring to Halle Berry's role in Monsters Ball. I swipe a credit card down the crack of a girl's butt and I'm demoralizing women. Nelly is both right and wrong about that because the Academy would not give Halle Berry an Oscar or an award for roles like she had in the miniseries Queen, or Strictly Business, I think she was in, or Boomerang, or any of the, not Boomerang, she wasn't in Boomerang, but in any of those shows where she's a lighthearted, fun-loving character, they're not going to award her for that. They're going to award her for being something debasing, something that, quote unquote, as the Academy would say, stretches her to act out something that she wouldn't normally act out. You know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, the Academy is not going to award the good Halle Berry. They're only going to award the debasing Halle Berry. Like, they're not going to give awards to, thank you, Kareem. She was in Boomerang, so my memory wasn't failing me. I appreciate that. So they're not going to award Denzel Washington for Philadelphia, and for but they will give him an award for Training Day, because that was something totally out of character for what we have known Denzel for doing. So these are the types of things that the Academy awards. Now, Nelly was right about that part, but he was wrong because he didn't see his role in demoralizing and devaluing women in an industry that profits off of the demoralization and the devaluing of women. Nelly, who has a teenage daughter, doesn't seem to realize his duplicitous role as a demoralizer of Black women for the next generation. Consider the entrepreneur's clothing line Apple Bottom, which we all know is a euphemism for a woman's perfectly round ass. Nelly has found success marketing his jeans and other products to Black consumers. Fair enough. I'm assuming they're old enough to make their own clothing decisions. But for what reason does Nelly market twill bubble shorts for toddlers? This too with the apple bottom logo emblazoned across the butt. The straight answer: brainwashing. Perhaps we can take some comfort in the results from the Black Youth Project at the University of Chicago. In that study, 72% of Black youths ages 15 to 25 agreed with the statement: rap music videos contain too many references to sex. They were broken down by groups. 66% of the young Black women and 57% of the young Black men surveyed also agreed with the following statement: rap music videos portray Black women in bad and offensive ways. However, the effects of brainwashing were evident in 44% of young Black men surveyed who disagreed with the statement: rap music videos portray Black men in bad and offensive ways. One interviewee answered the question this way: when you're framed as being cool for being a player, steady getting money, sex, and power, what's there to disagree with? So you see that? So the images that are being projected to these young Black men and these young Black people in the music videos is that you're cool. You have it made if you get money, however you get it, having sex, then you have the power. As evidenced in the responses of this young man and Nelly, it's obvious that the mental conditioning of so many of our unfortunate brethren does indeed run deep. There's a young man named James who gave a quote to the author saying, when I was coming up, the media messaging told me that Black men were overly sexual. I was glad that I had sexual prowess and that I could please women, because otherwise I would have felt like I didn't live up to what I was supposed to be. So he was he was programmed into thinking that he was supposed to be a sexual object. Bamboozled by our own. Though the hypersexual images of black men and women were created centuries ago, studies have shown that once images are established, they change very slowly, if at all. They become a part of our collective culture, the DNA of newer, even viler images. These stereotypes are internalized in society and therefore become ideals for certain groups. Thus, even media designed specifically by Blacks contain images that maintain some of the characteristics of these stereotypes, notes scholar Christina N. Baker in her writings about the portrayal of sexuality in advertisements. In our state of mental confusion, we tolerate and laugh as some Black artists paint whole generations of Black women with broad Jezebelian strokes. Take, for example, this banter from the 2008 Tyler Perry movie Meet the Browns. In the following scene, a family finds out that their late father, whose name is Pop Brown, a respected deacon, actually lived an earlier life as a pimp. This news, which surfaced due to Pop's estranged adult daughter, raises questions about his female friends from the family's childhood. Only LB, an older son, can answer these questions. Remember Sadie? She was one of his hoes. What about Agnes with the freckles? Freckle faced hoe. What about Shirley, the one who used to make cupcakes? City hoe. What about your mother? Our mother. Nasty hoe. Yes, we Black people pull the trigger for our own image assassination, meaning we are the ones that play the actors and actresses that portray Black people as sluts and studs. From movies and music videos created by Black entertainers, producers, and directors to street lit by Black authors that overemphasize erotic and even violent street life, the latter, interestingly enough, is a $300 million a year business built on titles like Nasty Girls by Eric S. Gray, Bitch by Deja King, and Thugalicious by Noir. They are literally flying off the shelves and into the hands of African American women and men ranging from the ages of 15 to 90, according to Black Issues Book Review. Sadly, though, too many of us have become the new perpetrators of the brainwash myth of brutes and brutality. After emancipation, pro slavery advocates argued that slavery was still needed to control Black creatures. Otherwise, they would revert to their savage, brutish state. This belief was central to the ideology of racism that flooded the South after 1890. Historian George M. Fredrickson wrote, in the Black image in the white mind, whites had to contend that many Negroes were literally wild beasts with uncontrollable sexual passion and criminal natures stamped by heredity. At the beginning of the 20th century, anti Black imagery in so called scientific journals, newspapers, and best selling novels heavily promoted the Black race rapist thesis. Fredrickson also wrote about Dr. William Lee Howard's 1903 medical journal piece in which the scholar explained that the increase in sexual crimes by Black had a psychological basis. saying the large size of the Negro's penis, which lacked the sensitiveness and the terminal fibers which exist in the Caucasian's penis, caused him to be had to have fits of habitual sexual madness and excess. So this was his theory. This was his theory. Because black men had a bigger penis, it wasn't as sensitive as the white male penis. This was their scientific racism. Film historian Donald Bogle confirms that brute imagery persisted in pop culture most vividly in the late 60s and 70s with the rise of blaxploitation films. Movies that played on the needs of the black audience for heroic figures. The era gave us movies like Shaft, Superfly, Hammer, and Trouble Man, all with black studly heroes who triumphed with blazing guns and or raging penises. The trend continues today with disproportionate media images of wild, undisciplined, irresponsible, excuse me, and oversexed black thugs, pimps, and seductresses, players, and playettes. Like prized pit bulls on the plantation, young, virile men slaves were trained to stud, while often forbidden to have normal relationships with women or children. The slave owner rewarded the valuable buck for making babies. Inhuman property could be worked or sold for more profit. Fast forward 4 centuries, and we still see the effect of this phenomenon in the disproportionate media images of wild, undisciplined, irresponsible, and oversexed black thugs, pimps, seductresses, players, and playettes. Through Hollywood films and rap videos, we see black men with no meaningful relationships who still place unnatural value on their sex organs and their ability to stud the black Jezebel. Stay on the scene like a sex machine. During slavery, black men were encouraged to see themselves as licentious heathens, subhuman, simian sex machines, and natural born breeders with no emotional attachments. Today, our dilemma is in an existential crisis that collectively we've been unable to resolve. How can a black male be a man in America? Now, remember, Neely Fuller tells us that a black male can be anything but a man because manhood in America is reserved for the white male. If we reflect honestly, we'll concede that our perpetual quest for the next conquest, the need for constant sexual gratification, stems from a deeper personal crisis, the compulsive need to scratch an itch that will not go away. Again, a quote from that James character. When you are in a room with white men who think they are better than you, assume they have more money than you, certainly have more advantages than you, a black man can look at him and know, yeah, all that might be true, but I could fuck your woman and I could take her from you. It is a weapon in male racial warfare. Our sexuality trumps yours. Even today, the media manipulators, both black and white, keep us fully duped, focusing on the head between our legs and discouraging us from using our thinking head. Shake your moneymaker. Serious self analysis is not a male only exercise, Black women must also expose the demons that allow them to tolerate and reinforce the Jezebel image. Perhaps the Jezebel persona would be rejected quicker if more women scrutinized that destructive and demeaning role and incarnations from a historical perspective. She was the negress that German botanist and physician Johann David Schoff described during his travels to the colonies in the early 1780s, who was honored to bring a mulatto into the world. The black woman in 1915 was Lydia Brown, the promiscuous mulatto mistress in the racist film The Birth of a Nation, who used her feminine wiles to seduce powerful, well meaning white men. Later, during the blaxploitation period, Jezebel was reincarnated as the militant, more independently but still foxy and hypersexualized woman who bared her butt and breasts while solving mysteries and fighting for justice. On TV sitcoms like Friends, where black people were rarities, both Joey, who was played by Matt LeBlanc, and Ross, who was played by David Schwimmer, woo and win the affection of Charlie, who was played by Aisha Tyler, a black paleontologist. Because on the set of Friends, they hired so few black people that the five friends that were there in a city of over a million people, they had to fall for the same black girl. But that's another conversation. Ironically, in one episode of Friends, Phoebe Buffay, played by Lisa Kudrow, confesses a sexual attraction to a black man. In fact, when her pal Rachel Green, played by Jennifer Aniston, is in search of an unattached sexual encounter, Phoebe arrives at her apartment offering to share her lover. The fact that her lover was really just a man sized cardboard cutout was funny. The character, however, was revealing. The life size cutout was of Evander Holyfield, you know, a brute. Blood sucking sluts and studs. Greetings, Bwana Haguziki. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate you. Blood sucking sluts and studs. Sluts and Studs as a theme was written into the plot of True Blood, the hit HBO series about vampires and humans coexisting in a small Louisiana town. Pretty and witty Tara Thornton, played by Rutina Wesley, was trouble keeping has trouble keeping a steady job. Stereotypically angry, sassy, and confrontational, she is known for her sharp tongue. She has an unrequited crush on Jason Stackhouse, played by Ryan Kwanten, the sculpted, white, not too bright town gigolo. After fast talking her way into a bartending job at the bar Merlotti's, Tara propositions the white boss, Sam Merlotti, that starts out as a night of no strings attached, legs up in the air, hot sex, turns into an off, back in the office, and wherever else series of graphic just because sexual encounters. Of course, in a town where vampires and humans mingle, one could expect some pathological behavior, but Tara, who's ironically named after the slave plantation in Margaret Mitchell's 1936 novel Gone with the Wind, and the other major black characters in True Blood are largely early American black stereotypes. For example, actor Nelson Ellis plays Tara's cousin, Fayetteville Fayette Reynolds. He is not only Merlotti's short order cook, but also the town's resident drug dealer, violent prostitute, and three snaps oh so gay white man chasing host of his own homosexual pay per view website. Then there's Tara's mother, Letty Mae Thornton, played by Adina Porter, former child abuser, habitual mean drunk, and Jesus freak convinced she's possessed by a demon. In one episode, while attempting to arrange a bank loan, Letty Mae sits on the lap of a white loan officer to demonstrate why her landlord doesn't mind when she falls a little behind on her rent. In a world of equals, there's nothing sinister about interracial relationships, but we don't live in a world of equals. However, in a society where Black women have been branded as devoid of healthy Black relationships, as lewd, manipulating vixens, and as the white man's sexual conquest, these repeated images and messages slip into the seedy category of subtle propaganda. Sex, I started very early. I know most that I was looking for the love that I had not received from my father. The guys I chose, I thought they were good hearted people, but you couldn't trust them. They were like my father, male chauvinist bad boys. They didn't stay around either. They would just get what they wanted and then disappear until they wanted it again. Yeah, I became a booty call. A quote from a woman named Leela. Sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'd wager that some producers of this material actually believe it doesn't matter. Remember, complicit in the Black inferiority campaign is a dual component that reinforces white superiority. Without effort, many whites subconsciously perpetuate roles assigned to Blacks in colonial times. It's part of the human DNA to push the limits. Today's advertising industry says if you don't stop us, we'll place erectile dysfunction and male enhancement ads on TV during family hour. The pharmaceutical industry will put products on the market that will kill people, saying, in case of death, consult your doctor. If regulatory agencies didn't say, stop. If entertainers, especially those escaping poverty, get an opportunity to make it in an industry that promotes destruction, they will exploit the rules of the game. For all we know, Trina might be a virgin, but she's going to sell the hell out of slutty golden showers, shit in your face shtick until enough of us say stop. I'll add here that Cardi B, who is a very popular character with and Meg the Stallion with the WAP and all this other stuff, Cardi B is married and she's selling y'all on singleness and lewd sex. Now she was married. Now I don't know what her relationship status is now, but I know that at the height of her career, she was a married wife with kids. Now her husband may not be the most faithful man. That's something to consider. And I don't know what her status is to this day, but just know that these people that are entertainers, that are entertaining you, are selling you on the idea of something. That's not the life that they live. They are living wholesome lives that are of marriage and family, and they're selling you on the idea of singleness and thoughtnet and being outside. And that's not what you should want to be, and that's not how you should want to be. You should want to build your family. The most revolutionary thing you can do is build your Black family. At one point, during the 2009 BET Awards show in Los Angeles, someone, anyone, should have stood up and shouted, hold up, these are our little girls. During the show, rap artists Lil Wayne and Drake took to the stage to sing a sanitized version of Wayne's song Every Girl, a little dirty, in which Wayne, in his words, wishes to fuck every girl in the world. Accompanying the rappers on stage were young girls who appeared to be 15 years old or under. Social entrepreneur, writer, and editor April R. Silver blogged about her reaction to the routine at Clinch My Mag Online, saying, I was hoping that a hunched over stage manager would bust through from the backstage and scoop up the children, rescuing them from harm's way, from being associated with this song. But instead, what those girls witnessed from the stage was hundreds and hundreds of adults, mostly black people, staring back at them, co signing the performance. Even if Lil Wayne presented the clean edit of his song, and even if, reportedly, one of the preteen girls on the stage was Wayne's own daughter, the rapper and BET set the stage for child pornography, as Silver argued in her essay when she said, last night we were reminded that there are few safe spaces for our girls to be children, that some of us are willing to trade their innocence for a good head nod. I support the proactive approach Silver described, which includes boycotts, national letter writing campaigns, and other activities designed to shame and or pressure. Silver wrote to persuade BET to improve its programming, citing Proverbs. Silver concedes that there will always be fools amongst us. However, she adds, there also are wise ones, a small group of people concerned about the long term health and well being of the community. Ultimately, a successful anti Black inferiority complex strategy will serve those who are affected by both Black inferiority and white superiority. However, we must create enough wise ones armed to say, we've had enough with this studs and sluts imagery. Tracking the shame. Unlike other ethnicities, Blacks are told to get over their past. The shame attached to our journey helps make us attempt to comply with its directive. To succeed, we must arm ourselves by understanding ourselves and the poisonous roots of studs and sluts predicament. Then he has a chart here connecting the dots. The studs and sluts contemporary manifestations. The stud on the hunt. Black men as sexual exploiters, conditioned studs with an internalized brutish nature, animalizes, dehumanizes, objectifies, and views women as objects unworthy of long term commitment. The historical roots of this: Black male slaves were brainwashed to see themselves as studs. They were rarely allowed to form relationships they could control. This created an ambivalent love-hate relationship between Black men and Black women. The contemporary manifestation of the gold digging slut, who is a Jezebel like sexual object, allows herself to be the conquest in return for material goods. She devalues the importance of sex and suppresses her need for tenderness and compassion. She is unworthy of love and avoids disappointment. I'll add, she believes she is unworthy of love and avoids disappointment. The historical roots of that: the black female slave was always treated as a sexual object, told that all she had to offer was her body. She had no control over who raped or exploited her. She couldn't afford to connect with her sexuality. She couldn't afford to connect her sexuality with her emotions because it would be detrimental to her to connect her sexuality with her emotions because she had no control over over what happened to her body sexually. Supersized studs and sluts. Supersexual objects, every other human quality is stripped away. Supersized studs and sluts identify with and promote familiar sexual stereotypes. The historical roots of that: slaves learned that sex was an effective bartering tool. A good breeder earned the master's praise. A black woman and her family were rewarded if she satisfied the master's carnal urges. Stripped of all self esteem, slaves clung to the one possession they had that always mystified, tantalized, and angered whites: their sexuality. The contemporary manifestation: do what you gotta do. Black men and women justified the unjustifiable. They employ defensive devaluation to justify sensation driven, dehumanized lives of sexual objects. Selling sex and hypersexualized behavior is legitimate and necessary to make it. The historical roots: sexual subjugation forced Black men and women to use the power of their sexuality. Many regarded it as a survival skill. Over time, psychological defenses were erected to block the depression and despair that often accompanied such actions. So over time, they had they had to mask their feelings. They just had to do what they had to do. They had to mask their feelings. And over time, the depression and the despair and the things that they feel about using their bodies just for sex in this dehumanized, devalued way, they just block it out. The cost of our benefits. How can we honestly face our own mental distortions? A cost benefit exercise is a good start. For example, let's look at the misogynistic lyrics and music videos put out by hip hop artists Trina and Killer Mike from their song Look Back at Me. I'm gonna make it rain for you. Here's a golden shower. Come a little closer. I wanna fuck your nose. These aren't even good lyrics. Short term benefits: get paid. On board with hip hop prosperity train, the Brute and the Jezebel images, lyrics, and product lines generate lots of money. Media producers, directors, actors, rappers, writers, dancers, and others get paid handsomely. The second short term benefit is instant gratification. Living the life of the Brute or Jezebel provides a basic sense of short term pleasure and temporary relief, be it sexual or financial. But there are long term costs. Number one, it fuels a legacy of sexual brainwashing today and tomorrow. Number two, it keeps Blacks in a hedonistic mode, reinforces their inferior status and inferior status on Blacks. Number three, it distracts us from other areas of personal, social, and economic development. And number four, it reinforces the brainwash like nothing else. Armed and ready. African Americans have been conditioned to see themselves as powerless. Yet, if only a fraction of the 39 million of us that are in the United States decide we want to stop media portrayals of studs and sluts, believe me, this part of the Black inferiority campaign would end quickly. It's a tall order, I know, but we can get there, especially with the proper tools. Studs and sluts, positive propaganda cues. I am more than my sex. We need to understand that there is more to who we are than our sexuality. We have our minds, we have spirit, and we have the need to be holistic human beings. Lust is not the whole you. My actions will be governed by what's behind my eyes, not what's between my thighs. That's a bar right there. From whole to whole. Women have infinitely more to offer than just their bodies, more to offer to men, and more to offer the world. From manhood to manhood. Men need to understand that manhood is not gained by sex alone. Waking up. Real benefits can be realized when we unplug from conditioned thinking and confront the burden of being defined solely by our sexuality. Although far too many of us have accepted the role of myth maker, luckily, there are also those who are determined to reverse this form of brainwashing. Some artists, media outlets, and community groups have started efforts to provoke widespread change by asserting healthy images of Black sexuality or by simply demanding that programming executives do a better job of presenting well rounded Black images. A movement known as Black erotica argues that it is time for self defining expression, one that portrays Black sexuality as more beautiful than beastly. From Brown Sugar, the tastefully written stories collected by Carol Taylor, to the groundbreaking anthology Erotic Noir, Black Erotica, edited by Miriam DaCosta Willis, Reginald Martin, and Roseanne P. Bell, to the intimate colored nudes of women renowned photographer Mark Baptiste, Black culture is realizing, perhaps hundreds of years or so too late, that we are human first, that we have impulses and feelings and desires to examine and admire and touch and photograph and paint and write about the human body and human sexuality. Author Jill Nelson told the New York Times, we are finally dealing ourselves into that kind of dialogue. In a 2001 interview with ABC News for his film about boxer Muhammad Ali, former rapper turned superstar Will Smith talked honestly about the male image, the Black male image. Tons of women would love to have sex with me. I hate the image of Black men as promiscuous and unable to control themselves sexually. I don't like that image. This was before that red table talk he had with Jada, so keep that in mind. The most consistent retort from television and media producers when responding to charges that there are few television programs or mainstream movies that portray Blacks as well rounded couples or in loving relationships is, well, there's no support. It's time for reprogrammed thinkers to deflate this argument. We must compel ourselves to support alternative, more holistic Black images in Hollywood and rap videos and in consumer marketing messages. The brainwashing collaborators who serve as the new myth makers are among us. What's needed are more myth breakers to enact real change, The modern day engineers of the Black inferiority campaign, no matter what their color, must understand that myth breakers are on duty and we are waking up. We are watching and we will take action. And that's the end of chapter 3. I think that this was an interesting chapter because what he's talking about is actually interacting with the apparatus that produces the media content that we consume. Now, we can't do anything necessarily about the news or about the propaganda they put out on that level. But what we can do is we can write letters to the people that put out content. We can write letters to people that put out content such as commercials, such as entertainment. We can talk about how the Cosby Show was a really good show in spite of Bill Cosby. We can talk about how um, the Parkers had its problems, but it was an okay show. Moesha was a good show. We can talk about how one-dimensional characters seem these days, and they always want to talk about sex. We can write letters. We can write emails to these people. We can ask why they canceled Lovecraft. We can talk about these things. But these are the things that we have to do. We have to get tired and we have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired and get to the point where we're demanding that these people are producing the content that we want. Because otherwise, they're never going to produce the content that we want. Because it's not what's profitable for them, and it's not going to sell. It's not going to sell. Okay? So we have to get to the point where we are. Moana Haguziki says this book is awesome. Has anyone tried to legally go after the corporations for creating these narratives that they know will have negative effects? No, because it's not profitable. It costs money. What usually happens is that people begin to go through the process. They may write the letters, they may even get an impact, right? They may write the networks and they may get some small change. But as far as them being held accountable for the narratives that they promote, for the destruction of our communities, for the different things that they are propagandizing in the eye gate and ear gates of our children, no, they're not doing that. Greetings, Moana Haguziki. How are you tonight? Can you hear me? Moana? He may not be able to hear me. Let me. Okay. Maybe he'll come back. But these are the things that we have to dare to challenge the narrative on. This is why we need to educate our children into becoming lawyers and attorneys. This is why we need to finance that really smart kid that likes to debate so that they will go into law and not into the house of consciousness. This is why we need to educate them and give them an opportunity to be more than what they think they can be, so that they can come back and file these lawsuits and petitions and they know that it's being done correctly. All right, it says you're not connected, Bawana. I don't know why, but it says you're not connected. Um, but we have to get to the point where we are making the decision to fund and finance our liberation. We have to stop waiting on someone else to fund and finance our liberation. Nobody is going to finance it for us. All right, Bawana. Bawana Hagaziki says he guessed it isn't working. He'll come on next time. No one is going to fund and finance our liberation. Your enemy is not going to teach you how to overthrow them. They're not going to teach you war. They're not going to teach you sex. They're not going to teach you about relationships. They're not going to teach you about money. Those are things you're going to have to go get it for yourself. And you're going to have to find a community of people that are like minded so that you can get to the point where you are working with the people that are like minded and building those skills together. That's one of the reasons I do this work so that we can build those skills together because I don't know it all. I don't have all the answers. I'll never tell you that I have all the answers. I have a lot, but I will keep asking questions until I get an answer that I can understand and appreciate. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. I want to thank Kareem Paris, Sister Raw, and the elders listening with her. Bawana Haguziki, Manning for mayor, I know is listening. I know Anthony McPhail is listening. I know the forecast is listening. I know that Oni Tase from the Pro Black Perspective is listening. I know that Koku from the Bitter Medicine Podcast is listening. I know that Jose Bronze is listening. I know that KW97 is listening. I know that Dorico Cooper is listening, and so many others and you. Yes, even you. I appreciate and value your spending time with me tonight to listen to this. Buwana Haguziki thinks that this is an awesome book. I think it's an awesome book as well. I think it's a book that we should take some time to sit with and understand because why are our people willing to be paid to portray a debasing character or caricature of us? Why are they willing to be paid to portray the whore and the stud? Why aren't they educated enough? Why don't they have enough racial pride and esteem to not be Jezebels and brutes on camera for other people? We have enough problems. Why do we need that image portrayed and projected in front of us? All right, guys, I will be back on Monday at 7 p.m. reading The American Slave Coast by Ned and Constance Sabletti. I told you again, I'm sorry that I missed some time recently. My niece was graduated and she was promoted from the 8th grade into high school. So we were celebrating her. In the midst of those celebrations, she had a life threatening situation occur. Her neck was caught in an attraction at a zip line place because they inappropriately seated her in the ride, and it choked her to the point where she passed out. And when she passed out, they finally got her down and off the ride. I was bonkers out of my mind, but she is safe. All is well. And we are talking to people that can resolve the problem, if you know what I mean, because this was specifically negligence. All right, guys. I thank each and every one of you for listening, and I will talk to you soon. All right, peace, guys.